universe is what we call, or what we know as the, anong tawag dito? Big Bang Theory. So we are going to continue our discussion today with the idea of Big Bang. So sabi niya dito, with Big Bang kasi, the universe was very small. It started like as small as a dot in the middle, and then suddenly it exploded and expanded into something bigger. Now the explosion of the idea of Big Bang actually has several benefits or effects when it comes to the formation of our universe. Now, number one is that this explosion distributed pockets of energy. So dati, the energy was concentrated in the middle, but now the energy is distributed to different parts of the universe na. So from something in the middle, it exploded and it allowed the universe to expand. So, syempre yung explosion na yon, it also distributed yung energy into different parts of the universe. So kung dati concentrated lang in the middle, now different parts of the universe have this energy. And you have to understand that the energy is not equally, how do you say this? It's not equally, wait lang, hindi siya equally distributed. Some areas of the universe have more energy, while some areas of the universe have smaller amounts of energy. So hindi siya equally distributed. At the same time, the energy that was formed from the explosion of this Big Bang allowed the quarks, the smaller quarks, to form yung mga protons and electrons and neutrons. And from there, these subatomic elements started to form itong tinatawag nating lighter elements. Specifically, the very first element that was created with the explosion, the energy from the explosion of Big Bang, syempre, is hydrogen. And later on, we will see a similarity na in the formation of our universe, similar to the formation of the solar system, it has to start with something small and simple. And even in the formation of life, it has to start with something small and simple. So with hydrogen, it is actually the smallest element. It only has an atomic mass of 1. So napakaliit niya. Pero advantage niya yon na maliit siya because it can form bonds with another hydrogen atom, and it can form bonds with other lighter elements. So yung hydrogen atom na yan, it bonded with another hydrogen atom, and through the process of nucleosynthesis, it then created the second element, which is what we call as helium. So nagkaroon na ng helium, which allowed the stars to form. So stars such as our sun is primarily made up of helium. And sabi natin, very important yung formation of sun in the history of our universe, because these stars are what we call as element factories. So can somebody from class tell me their idea on why stars are labeled or stars are called as element factories? Raise of hands if you want to share your ideas. Yes, John Paul.
Ma'am, kasi dyan po nagkikreate yung heavy and complex elements.
Okay, thank you very much, Kuya John Paul. So sabi natin, factory sila ng elements because it is actually in the stars where the additional elements were formed. So from helium, may mga additional lighter elements pa that was formed in the stars. And nung hindi na kaya nitong stars na mag-create pa ng heavier elements, what the stars did is they had to die and they had to explode into what we call as your supernovas. So, syempre, may limit lang yung amount of energy that is contained in our stars. So, they can only create, after helium, they can only create yung mga susunod pa na lighter elements. Pero hindi pa nila kayang mag-create ng very heavy elements such as iron or copper. Those are very heavy elements. They don't have enough energy to create those. So what they did is they have to produce more energy, and the production of more energy is made possible by the by the explosion of these stars into what we call as your supernovas. So during that time in the history of the universe, the stars started exploding. So meron tayong multiple supernovas that produce a huge amount of energy that allowed heavier elements to form. So these heavier elements syempre includes yung mga iron that is necessary in the formation of our solar system. Okay? And then, nung na-create na yan, so sabi natin, meron ng elements, di ba, tulad nung paggawa ng bahay, the first part of the history of the universe is that they have to create all of the materials first. And those materials are in the form of your elements. So nung nakapag-form na sila ng simple, nakapag-form na sila ng light and heavy elements, now it's time to form yung tinatawag nating solar system. Now many scientists believe that the solar system actually started in what they call as a solar nebula. So these solar nebula are pockets in the universe or areas in the universe that are made up of dust and gas. So these dust and gas, they were created because of the different elements that was formed from the stars and the supernovas. So sabi nga natin, di ba, hindi equal yung kanilang distribution. There are areas or pockets in the universe that contains more dust, areas that contains more gas. Yung ibang area naman or some parts of the universe, they contain more gas and less on the dust. May mga areas of the universe naman where they contain more dust but less on the gas. Anyway, these solar nebulas are composed of dust and gases, different gases made up of the different elements that was formed. Now, dyan naman papasok yung tinatawag nating gravity. Now, we are familiar with gravity as the energy that pulls everything down. Now, in the formation of the universe and in the formation of the solar system, what gravity did is that they pulled everything together. Pinaglalapit niya yung mga materials closer to each other. So in this solar nebula, because of the gravitational force, it allowed or it forced this solar nebula to collapse. So ibig sabihin, nagdikit-dikit na sila, dati layo-layo sila, and then somehow because of the gravity, they now are very near each other, and they now, nagbanggaan na sila sa isa't isa. And this collapse of the solar nebula, syempre nagbanggaan na yung mga different gases. So now it formed a sun in the middle. And we all know that in a solar system, specifically in our solar system, the middle is composed of our own sun. So from the solar nebula, yung mga gases na nag-collapse at nagbanggaan with each other, it formed the sun. So syempre, naiwan yung extra gas kung meron man, at saka syempre yung mga dust that is found in the solar nebula. And these excess gases at saka itong mga gas, dust na ito, started to form these planets. So again, it is formed because of the gravitational force that pulls the dust together. So maliit man yung dust, and then it starts to, nagdikit-dikit, so palaki na siya ng palaki until it forms planets and other parts of the solar systems such as yung asteroids. Syempre, comets are also made up of dust particles. Your meteors are also made up of dust particles. So lahat ng natirang dust at saka na iwan na mga gas na hindi nagamit for the formation of the sun, sila na yung nagdikit-dikit at nag-form nitong mga planets at saka ng mga other parts of the solar system. Sabi nga dito, tulad ng asteroids are primarily rocky materials. When it comes to comets, it's a combination of dust and gas particles. The same when it comes to the moon, primarily rocky materials siya. So yung gravity, what's the function of the gravity here is that it allowed these planets and the sun to form because it pulled everything together. Pinagdikit-dikit niya hanggang sa nakakreate na sila ng mas malalaking mga ang tawag dito, parts such as your planets. So now, meron ng sun, meron ng planets and other members of the solar system. So formally, na-create na niya yung tinatawag ninyong solar systems. So sa bawat pockets of energy and pockets of element in the universe, you have your galaxies that was formed, made up of different stars, and then from those galaxies, you have, of course, your different solar systems. So now, let's continue our discussion. Siyempre, meron na siyang solar system. So how did the planets in each solar system grow from something na dust particles lang, they grow into something bigger such as your planets. So sabi niya dito, clumps of dust particles na because of the gravitational force, they were clumped together na pagdikit-dikit sila. And they formed planets. We have two kinds of planets. We have the terrestrial planets. And of course, we have the gaseous planets. So yung formation of these planets depend on the availability of materials. Kapag in this area of the solar system, mas maraming gas, pero konti lang yung mga rocky materials such as yung dust, ang na-form niya is of course yung gaseous planets. Examples of gaseous planets is yung Saturn, Uranus. Usually sila yung may mga ice, sila yung made up of different gases, and we all know na sila yung mga planets that are formed far away from the sun. So sila yung mga nasa dulo ng ating solar system. Pero yung mga areas of the solar system where mas marami yung dust particles at mas konti yung mga gaseous elements, they also clump together and they form what we call as the terrestrial planets. So when we say terrestrial planets, ito yung mga made up of rocks, and usually they are found closer to the sun. So example of terrestrial planets is of course Earth, Mars, ayan, tsaka yung Mercury and Venus. They are made up primarily of rocky materials. Okay, so sila yung area na mas maraming dust particles compared doon sa gas. Okay? And because of gravity, syempre na-shape, nabuo na niya yung mga planets, kaya medyo spherical yung kanilang shape. It's because yung gravity niya, kailangan equal yung distribution, at yung shape na pinaka nag-aalaw ng equal distribution of gravitational force is yung spherical na shape. So medyo oblong, hindi siya perfect circle. At the same time, the gravity also put these planets into what we call as your orbit. So syempre, kung nandun sila sa area na yon, merong opposing force that keeps these planets stay in their orbitals. So hinahatak yung planets ng sun closer to the sun. At the same time, yung gravitational force naman ng planet na opposite, it keeps the planets away from the sun. So medyo stable yung kanilang orbit, pero dahil malaki yung sun, So syempre, these planets have to revolve around the sun. And of course, part of the growth of these planets is that the liquid and the gaseous elements eventually cooled down. So after the explosion, nung nagsettle down na yung, pagkatas ng explosion, nagsettle down na yung energy, it allowed for these elements and these materials to cool down, bumaba yung temperature nila. So some of the gases formed ice, tapos some of the liquid materials become solid. So yung, for example, yung melted iron, dahil mainit during the explosion, mainit siya, so in the liquid form siya. Now na lumamig na siya, it starts to form metals. Kaya yung mga asteroids natin is made up of metals and rocks. So talagang pag bumangga sila sa isang planet, they can cause quite a destruction kasi talagang matigas yung kanilang composition or yung material that made up these asteroids. Okay? So now, lumaki na at nag-develop na yung mga planets. Let's focus on our very own planet, which is the Earth. So one of the planets that formed dito sa ating solar system, pang ilang planet tayo, Kuya Mark Luis?
Three po.
Pangatlo. Ano yung una? Panggising lang. Ano yung unang planet?
Mercury po.
Mercury followed by
Venus po.
Venus and then of course Earth. So pangatlo tayo in the solar system. Malapit tayo sa Sun pero hindi rin naman super lapit katulad ng Mercury and Venus. Now, the Earth that we know now, pagka pinag-drawing kayo ng Earth, usually, ang kulay ng Earth ninyo is made up of blue and made up of green colors. Pero during the formation or during the beginning of our solar system, hindi naman ganun yung itsura ng ating planet. And for this part of the discussion, we are going to focus on the history of the Earth and focus on specific events that have helped Earth in its formation, lalong-lalo na doon sa kanyang characteristics which allows it to sustain life. Kasi in our solar system, only Earth has the capability to sustain life. So ano nga ba yung mga characteristics na yon at paano nga ba nabuo yung mga characteristics na yon? So kung makikita ninyo dito sa picture sa baba, the earliest itsura ng ating planet is that it's actually very red and very hot. So yan yung itsura ng planet natin right after the explosion. And hindi siya capable of sustaining life. And then from there, yung sumunod na model nila on Earth is what they call as the snowball Earth. This time naman, ito yung time ng Ice Age. Napakalamig naman niya. It's very white kasi even the oceans are frozen. And again, this planet is not capable of sustaining life. And then eventually, uminit ulit yung planet. So nagkaroon ulit ng oceans, lumabas na ulit yung land, and nag-evolve na yung life on Earth. So dito pa lang sa pangatlong model ng Earth na to, capable na magkaroon ng life on Earth. So hindi na buhay or wala pang living organisms when our planet was created. So syempre kailangan i-prepare pa rin yung ating habitat. So kung natapos na yung construction ng bahay, syempre to make it livable, kailangan pa rin natin siyang ayusin. So yung iba nagpipintura pa, yung iba namimili pa ng mga furniture, yung mga kama, upuan, lamesa, ganyan, para pwede nang tirahan yung bahay. So nabuo na yung bahay pero hindi pa siya fit for natirahan ng mga tao. So during this time, what's happening on the Earth is that it is making changes doon sa ating planet so that it is capable of sustaining life. So there are several events in Earth's history that we consider to be very important in a way that it allowed the planet to sustain life. So sabi natin, originally, our Earth is very red. And the reason why it's very red is because it's very hot. During this time, napakataas ng temperature ng ating planet. There are a lot of volcanoes kasi nga sa sobrang init niya, kailangang ma-release yung init from the center of the Earth palabas. So maraming volcanoes on the surface of the Earth. At the same time, napakabilis ng rotation ng ating planet. To the point that one day is equivalent to only 6 hours. So during this time, it's really not capable of sustaining life. Walang oxygen that is found on Earth. At the same time, napakainit niya. Wala pang mga bodies of water that can sustain life. So during this time, hindi pa siya capable of sustaining life. Pero during this time, dahil napakainit niya, most of the materials are in liquid form. So for example, yung rocks and metals, they are in the form of magma. So molten rocks and molten metals pa sila. And because of that, and again, the work of gravity, ang ginawa ng gravity is that it pulled all of the heavier elements in the middle. So for example, iron and nickel, those are some of the heavier elements. Hinila niya yun pababa. At the same time, yung mga lighter elements such as yung mga dust particles, rocky materials, syempre dahil sila yung magagaan, they floated on top. So nagkaroon ng anong tawag dito, categorization or naghiwa-hiwalay yung elements depending on how heavy they are. So syempre yung pinakamagagaan nasa taas, yung medyo magaan nasa gitna, yung pinakamabigat nasa pinakadulo. And this actually is important because it allowed the Earth to have these different layers. So alam natin yung layers of the Earth. Sa gitna, we have the core. These are the heavier elements. So most of nickel is found here sa gitna. And importante siya kasi yung, anong tawag dito, yung magnetic energy that surrounds the Earth is made possible because of this core. So pag nagta-travel by sea or by air, gumagamit ng compass. Yung compass na yon ay nagwo-work in telling the direction because merong magnetic force that surrounds the Earth made possible by this metallic core in the middle of the Earth. And then yung mga lighter elements, nung sila ay nag-cool down, it formed yung tinatawag nating crust. So yung nilalakaran natin ngayon or the spaces where our houses and infrastructures are built upon, these are called as your crust. And they are made up of lighter materials. Okay? And then, nung na-create na itong different layers of the Earth, unfortunately, kasama doon sa planets na na-form in our solar system, meron ding mga asteroids and comets na na-form. So, yung mga comets na yon, unfortunately, they are, anong tawag dito, they are abundant in our solar system and hinahatak din sila ng sun towards the center kasi malakas yung gravitational force ng sun. So as part of this pulling effect, syempre tayo malapit sa sun, hindi maiiwasan, nagkakaroon ng banggaan. So in the history of our Earth, there was a time when we were hit and we were bombarded by asteroids. Okay? And although some people might think na very negative na tinamaan or may mga asteroids na nag-collide on our Earth, there are also positive effects or mga benefits itong collision na ito. And one of them is that nung tumama yung asteroid na yon doon sa ating planet, it tilted the planet's axis by 23 degrees. So tatandaan natin, ang ating planet hindi siya very straight. Naka-tilt siya on one side. At nag-tilt yun kasi tinamaan siya ng asteroid. And very beneficial para sa atin na our planet is actually tilted on its axis because it provided us 4 seasons. So yung seasonal changes and distribution of the energy coming from the sun depende sa kung saan nakaharap yung planet natin. Beneficial yun sa atin. And it's not found in other planets. Kasi yung ibang planets, hindi naman sila tilted. They are very straight. So dahil tayo ay tilted, meron tayong mga seasonal changes or 4 seasons. Hindi masyadong pansin sa atin because we are very near the equator. Pero in other countries that are away from the equator, they really experience yung 4 seasons na yan. At isa sa benefit niyan is that we have a variety of plants and animals depending on the geographic location. Kaya nga ang isang animal, for example, yung tiger, bakit ba may mga white tigers? Bakit may mga Bengal tigers? And the reason for the variation or yung pagkakaiba-iba ng tigers na yon is because they live in different areas of the planet. So depende kung ano yung pinaka-primary na season in that area, syempre nag-adapt yung animal doon para mas ma-maximize niya. For example, yung pag-gather ng energy in the form of hunting, or baka it provides protection kasi hindi siya madaling makita kasi ganun yung kulay ng balat niya or ganun yung kulay ng buhok niya. So the variety of the different organisms on planet is made possible because we have different seasons. And the different seasons are caused by the tilting of the Earth's axis na naging effect nung bombardment nitong asteroid. At the same time, another benefit of this asteroid is that it slowed down the rotation of our planet. So sabi natin, initially, when the planet was formed, one rotation is equivalent to only 6 hours. So napakabilis. Pero nung tinamaan siya nung isang asteroid, so syempre malakas yung impact nung collision na yon. So medyo bumagal yung rotation ng ating planet. So now, from 6 hours, one rotation is equivalent to 24 hours. Kaya ang isang araw sa atin is composed of 24 hours kasi bumagal na yung rotation or yung pag-ikot ng ating planet. Okay? Siyempre, ang isa sa pinaka-benefit na nakuha natin dito sa mga asteroids na tumama sa ating planet is that we had our own moon. So when we say moon kasi, it is a satellite that revolves around a planet. So nung nag-collide itong asteroid na to, some parts na tumama, nabitak, so medyo naging maliit na. So yung naiwan na part ng asteroid na yon, yun yung naging moon na now is a satellite that revolves around the planet. So umiikot na siya sa ating planet. So meron tayong nag-iisang moon at ang pangalan ng ating moon ay yung Luna. So ano nga ba yung benefit na meron tayong isang moon that revolves around our planet? Number 1, it provides a more stable orbit. So hindi tayo basta-basta maaalis doon sa ating orbit kasi may additional force coming from the moon that keeps our planet away from the sun. So mas stable yung ating orbit because of the moon. At the same time, the moon provides us yung mga events or phenomenon such as yung tides. Di ba nagkakaroon tayo ng high tide at low tide because of the pull of the moon to our planet. And kung nanonood kayo ng balita at nabalitaan nyo yung malaking cargo ship na bumara doon sa Suez Canal. I'm not sure kung nabalitaan nyo yon. Yung Suez Canal kasi it's a body of water na dinadaanan ng napakaraming cargo ship na very important in the economy of the world. Tapos nung na-stuck siya doon, naharangan niya yung mismong kanal, so wala nang ibang makadaan. And nahirapan yung mga tao, parang it took 5 days or 6 days before nila ma-dislodge yung cargo ship na yon. And na-dislodge yun because of high tide. Nung tumaas yung high tide, tumaas yung tubig, mas napadali silang alisin yung nakabarang cargo ship doon sa Suez Canal. So, kung nabalitaan nyo yun, nabalita siya kasi isang araw, parang 1 day na hindi madaanan yung Suez Canal na yon, it cost billions of dollars in the economy, world economy. So, can you imagine, 6 days siyang hindi nadaanan. So, gaano kalaki yung nawala in our world economy. So, nabalita siya dahil doon. Okay? And then, nung nag-slow down na yung ating rotation, nagkaroon na tayo ng sariling satellite, and meron na tayong axis which allowed yung seasonal changes. Another major event that happened on the Earth's history is that sa sobrang init niya, it formed a a lot of water vapor. So nagkaroon ng condensation of water vapor. At nung naipon itong water vapor na yon, so syempre it precipitated. So in the history of our planet, for more than 1 month or for a very long time, it started raining. Kasi lahat nung naipon na water vapor on air, lahat yon ay nag-precipitate. So now it started raining in the history of our planet. And yung benefit ng rain na yon is that number 1, syempre, it cooled down the temperature of the Earth. So medyo lumamig na siya. From a very hot red Earth, unti-unti na siyang lumalamig. At the same time, this precipitation allowed the formation of the different bodies of water. So nagkaroon na tayo ng oceans, nagkaroon na tayo ng mga dagat. So, tapos bumaba na yung temperature. So, iba na din yung itsura niya from the initial red planet that was created. Okay? And then, nagkaroon pa ng other changes dyan. So, after mag-form ng bodies of water, nagkaroon ng ice age. Tapos, after ng ice age, bumalik siya sa normal temperature. So, natunaw ulit yung mga yelo. Napunta na doon sa dinosaur age. So, now let's continue. So, medyo livable na yung Earth. Meron na tayong bodies of water. Yung temperature niya, medyo okay na. Pero syempre, hindi pa na-form lahat. Nagkaroon tayo ng tinatawag na life on Earth when the bodies of water was formed. Okay? So, nung after niyang magkaroon ng ice age, natunaw na itong mga yelong ito. So, now we are back to a planet na may bodies of water, tapos mas malamig na yung temperature. Pwede nang tirahan. Okay? Pero syempre, hindi tao ang pinakaunang organisms that lived on Earth. So the first organism that lived on Earth, they lived in the primordial oceans. So when we say primordial oceans, ito yung mga sinaunang oceans during that time. And these primordial oceans are very different from our ocean today because they contain more elements. Mas maraming element na nakamix doon sa water nila. And from there, nabuhay yung pinakaunang living organism, which is what we call as the cyanobacteria. So the first organism na nabuhay din is something that is also very small and something that is also very simple and is capable of photosynthesis. So very important yon that they are able to use the energy from the sun to create their own food kasi wala pang available na food in our oceans. Sila pa lang yung pinakaunang living organisms. So no choice sila, kailangan ang pinakamagandang source of energy pa lang na available during that time is coming from the sun. So they are photosynthetic bacteria. And importante yon or beneficial yon on our part because through the process of photosynthesis, these cyanobacteria are able to produce oxygen. So ngayon, because of these simple organisms, nagkaroon ng oxygen in our planet. And we all know that oxygen is very important. One of the important elements na meron sa isang planet for it to sustain life is it must have oxygen. Pero syempre, during that time, konti pa lang yung napoproduce na oxygen nitong mga cyanobacteria. So yung mga oxygen na yan, nandun siya sa primordial oceans, and then nung dumami na itong mga cyanobacteria, mas dumami na rin yung mga anong tawag dito, oxygen na napoproduce nila. So ngayon, yung excess oxygen na hindi na kayang i-contain ng water, saka sila nag-escape at nagpunta doon sa ating air. So nagkaroon na ng oxygen in our air, at nung dumami pa yung oxygen found in the air, it now formed what we call as the ozone layer and the atmosphere. Now, this ozone layer and atmosphere is very important kasi during that time, life on land is not possible kasi pag nandun ka sa land, wala kang protection coming from the sun. So, hindi nasusustain yung life above water kasi very toxic yung UV rays coming from the sun. Now, nung nag-form yung atmosphere at nagkaroon na tayo ng ozone layer, nagkaroon na tayo ng protection, so hindi na direct na napupunta sa atin yung mga UV rays ng sun. So meron ng harang or a layer of gaseous protection surrounding the earth. So nung nagkaroon na ng ozone layer at nagkaroon na ng atmosphere at meron ng oxygen on air, it is now possible for life to evolve from the primordial oceans going to the land. So nung nakompleto na yon, may oxygen na on our air, meron ng atmosphere and ozone layer, so pwede nang mabuhay itong mga organisms above water, or they can now start living on land. So itong mga fishes, they have to evolve so that they can live on land. So syempre hindi naman pwedeng mabuhay ang mga fish on land. So they have to make changes syempre sa kanilang morphological structures. Hindi pwedeng may gills. They have to form yung tinatawag nilang lungs. So the first living organism that is successful in living on land is what we call as your amphibians. So we all know ang amphibians, these are animals or organisms that live half of their life on water and half of their life on land. So hindi pa sila completely 100% land. May areas pa sila of their life na talagang water-bound pa sila. And then they make changes, they develop into organisms that can live on land. At kung mapapansin natin, ito pa yung mga animals that have to lay their eggs on water. Kasi yung moisture and nutrients ng kanilang mga eggs, they depend on water. And then these amphibians, they again underwent evolutionary changes, they adapted to their environment. Siyempre, mas magandang mabuhay on land kasi mas konti yung competition doon. Pag konti yung competition, ibig sabihin mas madami kang access to the different resources that you need for living. So these amphibians, they started evolving and eventually became reptiles. Now your reptiles, these are your dinosaurs. Kaya napunta na tayo sa dinosaur age. And during that time, reptiles are the most successful organisms in our planet. They can live 100% on land. Tapos yung kanilang mga eggs, they don't have to put it on water. It can survive on land. So they became prolific, napaka-successful nila. And because of the abundance of materials and resources on land, saka lumaki at naging very complex organisms itong mga reptiles na to, which formed yung tinatawag nating mga dinosaurs. Pero syempre, the reign of the dinosaurs, it's not, hindi siya buong, alam niyo, hindi siya nagtagal. Another asteroid hit our planet, which eventually led to the extinction of dinosaurs. Kasi sila yung malalaki, so sila yung mas naapektuhan. And yung mga smaller animals, such as birds and mammals, sila naman yung nakapag-survive doon sa asteroid na yon. And eventually, these birds and mammals, sila naman na yung mas naging successful on our planet. So that is the history of our universe, how our solar system was created, at nung nabuo na yung planet natin, how it underwent changes so that it is able to sustain life. And even life on Earth, kung paano siya nagsimula into how it became as now. So one of the things that we can learn from the history of our universe and the history of life on Earth is that even yung mga small and simple things, they are capable of creating and bringing great things to pass. So kung matatandaan ninyo, our universe was created because of these very small and simple hydrogen atoms. Napakaliit nila, pero they are very versatile, and they created, they gave way to the formation of the different elements na mas ginagamit natin ngayon. And even on life, if you remember the evolution of life, it started with something simple, a single-celled bacteria that produced oxygen through the process of photosynthesis, which allowed the bigger and complex organisms to be successful in living on land. So, wag nating minamaliit yung mga maliliit na tao or maliliit na bagay na yan, because even the smallest organism is capable of creating bigger and greater things in life. Pero syempre, yung bigger and greater things in life na yan, it has to take time. So hindi yan minamadali tulad ng ating history of the universe and history of our solar system, history of our planet, and history of life.